What's going on, 75Junction? It's your boy Sherm, and we're here at the Hampton Roads Expo, and I'm here with the lovely Sheena E. How are you doing today?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing good. I can't complain. Happy to be here. So, for those who don't know, you can tell us about who you are and what you do.
So I'm Sheena. I go by Sheena E. My last name is Edwards. I shortened it so people wouldn't keep confusing me with like a politician, because I was getting confused with a politician for a while.
Okay.
But anyway, I'm Sheena. I'm from Philly.
Mm-hmm.
I am a self-published author and also a publisher. I also do hair and makeup for film and theater. I've been doing that for like 15 years. My background is in the entertainment industry and beauty industry.
Okay.
I once did product placement and PR and brand management for like small clothing lines and helped them get their brand placed in music videos on top celebrities like Jay-Z, Nas, Young Jock, Jeezy, just about anybody who's worth dressing. I used to do also celebrity personal shopping for like athletes and entertainers as well. But right now, in present time, I'm currently focused on my books, getting my story and the story of other women out there.
Okay, that's quite an extensive resume you had there. So what kind of drew you towards literature, as far as, because you used to do a lot of everything. So you used to do, brand management. You used to do product placement. I mean, what kind of swayed you away from that and into actually doing novelty?
Well, I've always been a writer. I've been writing for pleasure, like just to do it, just being young and having like a single mom, not really feeling like I had people to talk to. Like I was the little girl who always had like a journal, always wrote down what I was feeling. I wrote primarily poetry like most of my life. I was published at 17 in like a national anthology for my poetry. So
Okay.
I was like the go-to person when people would pass away, like, can you write a poem for this obituary, whatever. So writing always was something that I did fluidly and naturally. I never really wrote for other people though, as far as like letting other people read what I had written. My daughter was diagnosed with autism in 2013. And I felt like I was going through a transition. My beauty career was at a new height. I had just finished being lead makeup for a movie called Streets that was starring Meek Mill, my now very famous cousin Nafisa Williams, and a couple other good actors out of Philly. My friend Jamal Hill is a filmmaker, and I had, did makeup and wardrobe for all of his films. That movie came out, and it was the movie that kind of catapulted a lot of our careers, and it was set to catapult our careers. In the midst of that, my daughter was diagnosed with autism. I had just released my own makeup line because in my mind, I was like, my kids are getting older. They're a little more self-sufficient. I could move back to LA and, really kick off the things that I wanted to do in the beauty industry, because my transition from, doing the shopping and helping people with their clothing line, that wasn't never something that I wanted to do. I fell into that because my cousin had a line and he needed my help. I'm a self-starter and I'm a quick learner, so I was able to learn how to navigate in that world really well, and I wanted to transition and do what I love, because I was watching a lot of people make a lot of money. Like my cousin was making, we had invoices that was totaling $200,000 and $300,000.
Jeez.
And I was the only one with a kid at the time, and I was still getting paid, whatever little, what I consider penny money he was paying me. And it wasn't no love lost. My first cousin, I love him to death. He's still, to me, one of the dopest designers ever. I still support his brands, but it was like Sheena needed to do something for her. So that's what made me start my cosmetic line. I formulated my own bronzer, which is, you a guy, you probably don't know, it's like with women
Isn't
wear
that like
to
it
like
makes your skin
illuminate.
darker?
No, it kind of like illuminates
okay.
your skin or
Yeah.
whatever. So
Okay.
I was known for that type of makeup. So I came out with that line. It did really, 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 really well. It did really well in the first like season, and then again, like I said, my daughter had ended up being diagnosed with autism. I took a job. Working overnight, because with her autism diagnosis, she was in therapy like 10 to 12 hours a day.
Oh, okay.
I was used to making my money easy, like, hustling and doing makeup and not having like stationary employment. But when she got diagnosed, I couldn't do that anymore.
Right.
So I took an overnight job at a hotel, doing audit, and I was killing myself. I was driving half the time, driving my daughter to therapy, half sleep. And I really didn't want to be doing that. But what happened was I got bit by a spider one night at work, and I ended up in the hospital. I almost lost my arm.
Wow.
Due to the infection with the spider bite. And I felt like at that time I was doing everything right. I sacrificed my career for my daughter. I felt like I was doing everything I was supposed to be doing, but all of a sudden, like, God let this happen to me. When I was in the hospital, for like 3 months, and I wasn't making no money. Like, they denied my unemployment at the time. My job wasn't trying to pay me because, again, it happened at work. So it was like a big thing. And I cried. One night I was crying. Nobody was at the hospital visiting me. I was crying. And I was just like, God, like, what do you want me to do? Like, I felt like I was doing everything right. Like, I made all these sacrifices. And I woke up the next morning and my hands were swollen. And I'm like, why is both of my hands swollen? My fingertips was big, like a baseball glove.
Wow.
And I was like, well, maybe that means I'm supposed to write. And that day, I called my sister, told her to bring my notebook there, and I started writing. And I didn't know what I was going to write, but I was like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to tell my story. I'm going to tell the story of my daughter and her diagnosis, because even with me working overnight and having to stop doing the things I was doing, I had lost a lot of friendships.
Right.
I had separated myself, not on purpose, but people just didn't understand what I was going through as a new special needs mom. So I started telling our story. I started writing. Got out of the hospital, finally got my unemployment approved, and I didn't know anything about being a writer. I mean, being an author. I was always a writer, but I never was an author. Fate just worked a certain way. I met this guy. He had already sold like thousands of books, and we met through a mutual friend. And I was like, I'm writing a book. And he told me some of the realest advice I pass on to other people. He like, well, then write it then. He like, people tell me every day they want to write a book. He like, don't call me until it's done. He told me how many words it needed to be. So I waited 2-3 months, called him back. I said, it's done. He said, it's done. I said, now what to do? And he gave me the next step. So my first book, it's called Along Came Autism. I wrote that in real time during the first 200 weeks of my daughter's diagnosis, because that's known to be the most crucial time in a diagnosis. That's when your child is more receptive to the treatments, and that's when the parent is more receptive to the change that was about to change in their lives. So I wrote it to more so tell people in my life, like, really what I was going through, the depressive part of it, you know, the empowerment part of it, watching my daughter go from being nonverbal to verbal. And that book did really well. It sold really well in the UK. I won awards for it. And then I wrote a children's book with my daughter, and it won't stop from there.
Okay. Now that's amazing, and kudos to you, obviously, for being able to sacrifice ultimately your likelihood and your past life to accommodate your daughter. You know what I'm saying? Because as a parent, a lot of people don't realize when you become a parent, it's a life-changing experience. Like, obviously people say it, but it's different living it, because obviously you went from doing your own thing, being able to move how you needed to move, and then, you know, the diagnosis comes along, and now you have to literally stop everything you're doing. You have to adjust, and you have to change your life, and you have to change the trajectory of where you're going.
Exactly.
So I mean, that's amazing. And then just being able to stay active and persevere through all that is just very, very inspiring, honestly. So
thank you.
No, absolutely. So and that's not your only book too. You have three others, correct?
Me and my daughter co-wrote Get to Know Monroe.
Okay.
That book is a children's book. It's really beautiful. It pretty much takes you through a day in her life, because our children, especially in the Black and brown communities, they don't understand what special needs is and what special needs looks like.
Right.
So as my daughter was getting older and more advanced, she started wanting friends. So we would be like at the playground, and at the time she still was drinking a bottle. Like, you know, she just wasn't as advanced as her peers in certain ways. And when she would approach other children, she would often, you know, just be greeted like not in the most kind way.
Right.
So I figured, you know what, if I can't always run up and explain you to people, and you, at this time she wasn't as verbal as she is now, so she couldn't really explain herself. So I'm like, well, we're gonna tell you a story. So Get to Know Monroe basically takes you through a day in her life, and it explains some of the quirks and some of the things, you know, that children, not all, but, you know, some children on the spectrum, the behaviors they may display. And it's told in like a poetic way. Like, I went back to my poetic roots, and I wrote it like in a poetic way, so it's rhymey and cute, and it's really, really a good educational tool for any child, like ages 3 to maybe like 10 or 12, just so that they can understand what autism looks like. When you see certain children doing little things, you can, oh, that child might be autistic, and it might just, you know, like spark something in you. Like, my point is to just, you know, prepare the world for people like my children. At this time, 1 in 50 children are diagnosed have autism in the United States. 1 in 50. When my daughter was diagnosed, it was like 1 in 189. So the numbers, the prevalence is growing in the African American community. Unfortunately, our children go undiagnosed, late diagnosed, or misdiagnosed just because of the lack of resources and the denial of the parents. Parents just tend to be in denial and say like a doctor ain't gonna tell me something wrong with my child,
Right.
and then
I
that
got
hinders
you.
the child. So I just try to do my part. So we wrote Get to Know Monroe for that. I also have a book. It's called hashtag Be Inspired. It's basically like a self-help, not really self-help. It's like a journal. I wrote 2 books in a really short amount of time, but I treated writing books like a job. You know, like I got up in the morning and I had a regiment to write 2,000 words a day. I woke up at 6 a.m. before my children woke up so that I could handle that part of my life without it taking away from me as a mom. So, and then I learned, you know, I stacked my unemployment money to put out my first book. So in that, and Be Inspired, you learn like money management. You learn like my meditation routine, because self-care is another thing that I'm really, really, really big on. I went through a horrible phase of depression during my daughter's diagnosis. Working in the beauty industry all my life, I always look pretty. I always got my hair done, got my nails done, just always wanted to look good. But that, I looked in the mirror one day through her diagnosis and couldn't recognize myself. So I had to, you know, like pull myself out of a deep depression. I talk about, you know, how to adjust your life to the circumstance and, you know, and persevere through it. So Be Inspired kind of, it's like a journal. There's a lot of inspirational quotes in there. It's a little bit of my background in there. And I use that as just like a good tool to teach other people how to keep going, you know, teenagers, adults, whatever. And then my 4th book is like my baby. I'm stepping out of the realm of, because I don't want people to think I just write about autism, and I love that facet of my life. I have a nonprofit where I do things. It's called Be Inspired, you know, for people in the community as far as autism goes, and I love it. It's my reality. I'll never shy away from helping people when I can in the advocacy, but now I wanted to put on like my big girl panties and show people my hand, because I have a sick hand in this writing game, if I do say so myself.
Okay.
And I'm telling my story. It's a 3-part trilogy. Penetration Volume 1 just came out in February on Valentine's Day.
Okay.
And it basically is, I'm taking you through my life through sexual experiences, through profound sexual relationships I've had since a little girl. So it kind of bounces you through 2016, go back to the 90s. Just like when people always be like, why are you single? Or, you know, like, why you don't have a husband? And I'm like, I don't know. So I kind of sat back and started thinking about the relationships I've had with men and women in my life and how it shaped me to where I am now, as far as, you know, just being like a single woman and being sexually fluid and owning my sexuality and not, you know, feeling ashamed for different things that I like to indulge in, and some things I didn't want to indulge in, you know, that were forced upon me. So penetration, basically, people always think about sex when you say penetration, but it is a sexual component. But the word penetration also means when you finally have a grasp on a complex situation. And I feel like my life is that complex situation. So my books are all basically just telling my life story.
Okay.
But the autism thing, I'm a bomb autism mom, but I'm also a very sensual and in tune spiritual woman, and I want to tell that side of my life too. So
Okay. That's awesome.
that's the 4 books for now.
I got
and
you.
Another one on the way. It's called LAX. It's going to be an ebook. It's dropping at the end of August, and it's super dope.
Okay.
But
What's that one about?
A part of my life that it's gonna be, it's about a hustle I had
Okay.
for
So you
some
want to be
time.
a surprise.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's
I
real
got
dope.
you.
But it's called LAX, short for Los Angeles International.
Okay. Cool. That's dope. That's real dope. So what was your favorite book to write out of all 4?
Not really favorite. I love my daughter's book. I think it's beautiful. I love that my daughter can read people her book, and I love the message behind her book. I think it's beautiful that she can advocate for herself and that she is aware of her disability, but at the same time, she uses it as a tool to make friends and as a way to let people know who she is. That book has afforded me a lot of opportunities, so I appreciate that about it. The most difficult, I would say, because it's nonfiction, writing penetration, because volume 1 is real fast. I really just was trying to test the audience to see if they was ready for the way I write, because I write graphic,
Right.
and I write real, and it's intense. But having to go back and relive certain things in order to put them on a paper and make a person understand, because I'm going back into like 1996, so I got to put myself in a mind frame of a 15, 13-year-old girl.
Right.
You know what I mean? And explain these encounters in a way that I took it in as a child.
I
So
got you. Okay.
it took me 2 years to write that book because I had to go back and feel things, and after feeling some of the things, I got to decompress for a little while. So for me, writing is exciting, it's therapeutic, but it's also emotional and painful too, just to have to go back and it makes you feel good too to just stand in it and say, damn, like this happened to me and I'm not ashamed of it happening to me, and I learned this from that.
Absolutely.
So
That's kind of what I meant to ask you next was, when you go back to these places in your life and these experiences that you had, does it almost make you relapse in a sense where you like get these emotions evoked again and it kind of just weighs down, you have to like take a step back, like
definitely
I need to relax.
It's definitely even writing LAX, which is fun. It's fun writing LAX because I see like now with social media, like oh, people be scamming and people be doing all this stuff, and I'm like, y'all don't know nothing about no money.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like it make me laugh.
I got
like
you
know what I mean? And thank God, like I feel like I live 10 lives. Like the things, like I sat on the floor barefoot in panties and bra in Jamaica and counted $3 million in my life, me myself. So I've been through some things, and for God to, take me back after being the person that I was and changing my mindset and letting me be able to stand on stages and inspire women. Like when I speak to people, like they don't know my whole story. That's why I'm gonna get it all out so people can understand. Like I speak from a place of experience. I'm the type of person, like I don't like to talk about stuff unless I know what I'm talking about. So like I could teach you how to get some money. Okay. So you know what I mean? Like it feels good to have been drugged through the mud in a sense and still come out clean. Right. So I'm blessed and I've been blessed, and I give God the glory in it because without him, I ain't even supposed to be here. The things that I've allowed myself to indulge in the company that I used to keep, and just different things that I've done. Sometimes you look at your life and you're like why me? But now I'd be like, why not me? Like it was supposed to be me. I was supposed to be able to sit pretty and tell this dirty story.
Okay. All right, nice. Well, that's crazy. Like I said, you got quite the extensive background. I mean, there's a lot of things that you've done and a lot of things that you're knowledgeable in as far as your background is concerned. So what's your advice to anybody who has a child with autism, like that, is newly diagnosed? What would you say to them?
Newly diagnosed, or even in the beginning, like maybe you don't know if anything is going on, I would say listen to your intuition. You know your child. If it's things going on with your child that you think are abnormal, even if it's your first child, ask questions. Don't let a doctor make you push things to the side, because early diagnosis is the best thing you could do for your child. That affords them access to the most help. The only thing, autism is not curable, but autism, you can function better as time goes on. I'm not a doctor, and I know sometimes things happen, but okay.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
Things happen, but get your children all the help they can get. That is the only way. The only way that you're going to see progress. Is going to hurt, and you're going to want to cry yourself to sleep, and you could do that. Allow yourself the time to be depressed, but get your child the help that they need, because you're not hurting them. You're not hurting yourself. You're going to hurt them in the long run.
Okay. Definitely powerful message. So I don't want to take up too much of your time. So we'll wrap it up with this. Where can people find you as far as social media is concerned? Okay, so social media, Instagram is the easiest way. I am at I am Sheena_E. I am SHEENA_E. My website is IamSheenaE.com. You can find my book Penetration there, and like all these other girly things I sell. And like catch me wherever. Okay. I'm around. Okay, awesome. Well, I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to do this interview. I definitely appreciate that. And for those that are listening and that are watching, make sure you go ahead and follow Sheena on all social media platforms. Make sure you get her books. They're very powerful and got a very good message to them. So, again, I appreciate you, Sheena.
Thank you. And thanks 757, right? Or is it
75 Junction. You're fine.
Okay, 75 Junction. Okay.
I appreciate you. I messed up now.
I'm like the 757. Thank you.
No, thank you. I appreciate it.